Call the Committee of the Whole of April the 24th to order. And you have an agenda in front of you. Ask for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillors Randhawa, Councillor Forster. Any discussion, additions, deletions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. All right, before we get into the Committee of the Whole, I want to explain to people, because it can be just a wee bit confusing, what's happening here. We're having a Committee of the Whole meeting, which will then be followed by a regular council meeting. Okay. In the Committee of the Whole, we've got two presentations to be made to us. One is from PAWS Unlimited Rescue Society. The other is the proposed budget. Council will have a discussion around the budget. It will then go to the regular council meeting. So if you're here to speak to the budget, don't worry. No final decisions are made in the Committee of the Whole. It will be referred from this meeting to the next meeting, which will immediately follow. All right? Is that clear? For those that are coming to address the Committee of the Whole, so I guess I'm really speaking to PAWS, address all of your comments or questions directly to the chair. We encourage you to keep your presentation as brief as possible. I'm sure you've been advised of that. And remember that this is not a decision-making meeting. We won't be making any decisions on what you present to us here this evening, other than perhaps referring to staff. With that, come on forward and sit at the microphone, introduce yourself, or self. Well, self. I thought maybe more than one was coming, but okay, before you, before you speak too much, make sure that we get a microphone on and have a seat there so that people at home can hear what you're saying as well. So yeah, just push the button on that microphone. A little red ring will light up. There we go.
Thank you so much for having me tonight, and some of our PERS board members. Jennifer Arsenault is sitting beside me, one of our presidents. I'm the VP. Co-founder Kim St. Pierre is behind me. She's also a co-founder. And Leanne McIsaac is behind me, and she is the treasurer.
They're all waving on cue.
Perfect and wonderful. Again, council members, other people in the staff, and Mayor Herpan, thank you for having us tonight.
Of course.
All right, so PAWS United Rescue Society, PERS, kind of indicative of cat, purr. So it's an easy one to remember, okay? So just, sorry, space bar. Okay, now this is funny. The photo, I'm fishing in the Bulkley, and this is the one that Kelly picked, and Kim, they picked that one. But anyway, we are the co-founders. So on October 20th, 2020, we started PERS on a wing and a prayer, if you want the truth, during a global pandemic. Because we were tired of seeing a lot of suffering, of animal suffering. So we are a local nonprofit animal rescue, and we assist abandoned, surrendered cats and kittens in Prince Rupert and Port Ed. PERS has two co-founders, as I was telling you. Kim has brought many, many years of animal rescue. So PAWS, Mayor Pond, you are correct. She did for many years have PAWS for thought. So we collectively put that in there as respect, and just to remind ourselves of that. I brought a lot of freelance writing experience, and we just sort of jumped in. With only $160 in our account. That's how we opened. Again, on a wing and a prayer. We were extremely hopeful for change for animal wellness. The number of very sick kittens, pregnant ferals, or abandoned cats, unneutered males, was at an all-time high during the pandemic. Some of this was a direct result of job loss, evictions, and a vet crisis in BC. So what you're seeing here very quickly is what we come across. That sick kitten that you see on the left is very real and very common. It's called an upper respiratory infection. I know Terry would be very familiar with that. Pregnant mamas all over the place, ferals, abandoned, people, again, job loss, evictions, that's what you're going to see. Just as a side note, our logo, which you see with the heart-shaped cat face, the paw, was designed by Lynn Cacciani and her daughter Avril. It's sort of representing stop, look, and be aware of the overcat population and actively help to reduce animal abuse, neglect, suffering in Prince Rupert and in the outlying communities. PERS started with a very small team, a very dedicated and experienced local pet fosters that would socialize feral kittens and get them ready for adoption. PERS was actively involved in taking those kittens off the street, stabilizing them and changing their future from a life of on the streets to curbing the overcat population one kitten at a time. To date, PERS has overseen the adoption of over 300 kittens and cats in this area. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. It's an accomplishment, and I'm proud of this team. It's been overwhelming and daunting and beautiful all at the same time. Some are adopted locally, and others are adopted and transported to Vancouver and other communities in BC. So just as a side note, Vancouver has a 1-year wait list. We are drowning, but they have a 1-year wait list. Jen has linked up with Nikki Forbes, who has animal... I'm kind of lost in that moment there. For Action and Distress Society. We've taken about 15 to them in the last 2 months. So if you see little cats traveling on planes right now, those are our cats. Terry has taken so many for us down there, and they are literally adopted in a few days. They can wait months to get adopted in Prince Rupert. Traditionally, Prince Rupert and Port Ed have very established caretakers for cat colonies who in many instances feed and offer vet care and spay and neuter out of their own pocket, which is very admirable because it's not cheap anymore. As PERS has evolved, we've offered to bring established colonies with caretakers together and offer assistance. We build shelters, as you can see, with a very, very famous lady in there, Kim St. Pierre and Donna Carmen. It's nice to provide that. You know, if anybody has a cat or pet, you know what it's like to be pouring sideways rain, and to have the cat in a shelter is really a nice opportunity. So we support with funding and grants for TNR. TNR is called Trap, Neuter, Release, if you're not familiar with it. So we actively trap them, okay, in traps that you see. They're very humane, and then we'll release them a few days later after their recovery, okay? I'm part of that team. It's a crazy ride. We come in contact with new news of pregnant females, new kittens in the colony, injured and abandoned. So that rapport is very, very important, and building trust is incredibly important. TNR is very successful, just so you know. It's a worldwide practice with animal rescue for helping and ending animal suffering. So we're very on top of it. Many people before us, Linda Scott, Ashley Johnson, Kim St. Pierre, and so many others have done it. Jen Arsenault beside me, for many years. And to date, and since May of 2021, PERS has fixed and vaccinated and released 82 ferals. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of logistics and time for every single one that has been done. We vaccinate because we're hoping to just, make sure the populations are healthy and well. You're seeing some feline leukemia. You're seeing parvo. Okay, that's what's happening. During the vet crisis, dedicated PERS volunteers traveled to Smithers and Hazelton because that's the only people that would deal with it. Not locally, not in Terrace, not in Burns Lake, not in Prince George, but we were lucky enough to get to Smithers. That's an 8-hour trip. 5 in the morning, 10 to 15 cats. It was a lot of work. We did it. The cost can range from $350 to $500 per feral, and PERS has received for the last 3 years, I applied for them, the BC SPCA TNR grant. Last year we received $8,000. We matched it to 8, that's 16. We spent about $18,000 last year just alone in fixing some of those cats. This year we received 5. There's so many more very well respected and deserving rescues that also are coming on board now that the global pandemic is subsiding. Community partners. We work very closely with all those that you see listed. Joe and his team at the SPCA, NARA, has been incredibly helpful. They have alliance, and their name is Pitt Crosby told me, because they offer alliance to other rescues, and they help Kitimat Humane Society, Terrace Animal Shelter. Now, we welcome Rain and Rainbow's Vet Clinic. It's awesome to have them, just as another, care clinic. Of course, Pacific and Vet to Pet. Now, where there's a bit of a shift that we're seeing at our level, okay, is many surrenders. So in the last few weeks alone, I've assisted personally with people coming to me so they can go to rehab in Vancouver. They are crying, they are overwhelmed, and no one wants their adult cat. But we make room for it. We have made room, and I'm not going to tell you, we are squeezing them anywhere we can. I also had a young lady a month ago come to me who wanted to go to the transition house, and she wasn't going until those little kittens were placed. So that's, again, another shift in what we're seeing at the rescue level. There's many layers to a rescue. It's like an iceberg. You'll see the top tier, and then you look underneath, there's many layers underneath it. We're also assisting with outreach. When funds are available, we will assist low-income families who have cats and spay and neuter their pet. The costs, again, are just so not attainable for someone who has rent and food. They're not going to fix their cat. At our level at rescue, we are seeing that an unfixed cat in a low income is like a feral cat to us. That female will have multiple litters. They go to other people in the community and they just never see the vet. It's just an unfortunate reality. It does take a village, like anything, okay? It's incredibly, person's very unfortunate. We are almost, like, I know Joe's jealous of us at the SPCA because we have so many volunteers. I think what you're seeing is a global movement here in Prince Rupert with animal advocacy. They want to know how they can help. So not just giving us $100 check, but actually wanting to roll up their sleeves and help. Our biggest teams is actually the TNR. I think it's because all the shows they maybe see or the blogs they see, and knowing how to trap and release and knowing what amazing work they're doing. So your community, you're the people who vote for you, are really liking animal advocacy, which is cool. We recently had our AGM on March 15th to adopt our bylaw, our constitution, and code of ethic. And our financials are with Bahara as we aim towards a registered charity status. This is big. We went from grassroots to another level. We are trying hard to be very transparent so we can get more funding, so we can get corporate funding, and that people really can see exactly what we're all about and the work that we're doing. We currently have over 32 pet fosters, 40 kittens right now in care, and 3 nursing moms and 6 adults. It's a lot for a small organization like us. PERS is a big ship to operate. Expenses such as vet care, meds, pet supplies, and other expenses. We have 6 teams, namely TNR, fundraising, pet adoption, pet foster, relocation, and the code of ethics team. So we have almost 60 volunteers. We started with Kim and I back there. It's been something that's grown incredibly well. We will also be creating new programs, such as working directly now with BC probations for some of their clients to get community hours, which is cool. And creating education programs for PERS volunteers in schools and Acropolis Manor. That's something that Terry and I had talked about. For animal care inclusion. Fundraising and donations, we're almost done, friends. Online auctions, we currently have one on right now. And I know Terry's going to be donating to us. And we raised about $14,000 at Christmas. The year Christmas before $18,000. So all of our community members are incredibly invested in donating. And the most fun part for me, watching from the sidelines, is the bidding wars, the fist fights online. Seeing Sandra Jones and all these people, just like little sharks, and I love it. It's fun to actually watch. The community is very supportive, and we receive, as I was saying, many donations. We have that online right now until May 4th. Hint, hint, if anybody wants to come and jump in. We also receive funds from the Pacific Animal Foundation, which is in North Vancouver, has been doing it for 32 years. They're amazing. I'm wearing an Alice Cruda bracelet. She's been an amazing mentor for me personally, and getting that relationship established with the Pacific Animal Foundation in North End. When we have an operation that's going to cost us $1,500 or $2,000, all you have to do is call 1-800 Pacific Animal Foundation, and they give it to you. It's quite amazing. More recently, we have worked with other rescues, such again with Jen. This is her connection, Action for Animals in Distress Society in Burnaby with Nikki Forbes, giving us lots of food and taking about 15 of our cats, which is incredible. There's a 1-year wait list, I was telling you, in Vancouver. Again, our community members assist by volunteering to transport cats and kittens by Air Canada. So anybody of you who are going down there for training or workshops, conferences, call us up. 1-800-PERS. No, just kidding. We do have our own cell. It is listed on our site. There's no shortage of PERS like-minded people who want to be engaged in helping. The costs of cat overpopulation as Prince Rupert is reaching new heights in economic change and growth. More families are moving to our community, which is a huge plus. Yet in some key areas like Cow Bay, we have a serious overcat population. New families and tourists and locals will potentially witness, no word of a lie, first-hand animal suffering, starvation, injury, or death. They might witness a small kitten getting scooped up by an eagle. I don't know about your grandchild or maybe one of your family people coming and seeing that happen. I think it's quite traumatizing myself, torn apart by eagles. So ravens, they might come across, and this is very commonplace, a box of sealed kittens. That's happened just recently in Rashbrook. It happened last year at the hospital. It bag, they were still alive. It's something that Joe, SPCA, we work all together where we can kind of push them and fund. So this is our community. When we're Netflix binging or watching a show, this is happening right now because of that desperation. Okay. There we go. There's little Luna. We're laughing because she's in a very loving home, but that she was literally just yawning, and that's the picture that Kelly picked. At PERS, we have put a small dent in the cat population in Prince Rupert. We need help. We are interested in having a conversation with the city about how we can work together to alleviate the feral and abandoned cat situation in our neighborhood, our business districts in a port city that is expanding quickly, both in terms of business and tourism. Feral cats have an important role in the whole balance of a port city, keeping the rat population and rodents and mice down. As soon as you take that out of the equation, you're going to have a huge increase of infestation. Especially Cow Bay, there's so many dollies, like there's so many fish type kind of restaurants. We are interested in finding a donated space for animal welfare for TNR, for pre and post recoveries. I've had them in my shed for the last 2 years. My shed's small. It's a lot. 82. Our basements. We just need help. I'll put that out there. We'd also like to discuss promoting education to change the culture of our community. This is something Terry and I talked about. I'm almost using verbatim your words. How cats are perceived, changing the mindset of abandonment and the unfixed males not being a problem. And are there solutions to opening the discussion of the bylaw of pet owner responsibility? Lastly, to explore if there is provincial funding and resources that the city could assist us with support at PERS level. PERS is actively, in closing here, bringing like-minded community members together. We have a common shared goal to end animal suffering, neglect, abuse in Prince Rupert, where we live, where we work, where we play, and we raise our families. Thank you so much for letting us sit here tonight. It's very appreciated.
Thank you. Members of council, questions? Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Adey.
Thank you. As we've talked about, I'm very supportive of the work. As a pet owner myself, I fully understand what it means when you feel a sense of empathy for animals that are in distress. A couple of questions, just as a matter of curiosity. When you do the TNR program and release them back, are they tagged? Do you tag them so that you can follow them?
Yeah, we have an ear tip. It's on the left ear, the left side of their face, or the left ear. And it is something to identify them as having been fixed. So it allows our TNR team, if we do catch them again, the fact that the likelihood of them going in there, more likely a male, not a female, they want, we can identify it and like take them out right away.
And my second question was, I was curious about, you talked about the various committees, subcommittees. I'm interested in what the code of ethics team might be involved with.
It's very recently set up, and it's I work with Northern House. It's a big brother, big sister. It's allowing that transparency for us as a group as we expand and more members, more and more personalities to have a safe place to go. And if they're not happy with another team member or one of our board members or how something took place, they have a safe place to discuss it with three people on that team that are our board of directors.
Go ahead, Councillor.
And my last question, it strikes me as the kind of a problem that you never ever actually completely solve. I'm wondering what success looks like. I mean, you talked about they serve a purpose in the urban ecosystem. So it's counterproductive to rescue every cat and have it not be a thing. Is there a sense of what that correct balance looks like, so that you could sort of say, well, we've arrived at the best mix of our activity?
That's a great question. I think when you think of, again, I'm going to go back to the global pandemic only because the vet crisis was really overwhelming, even as our own personal pet parents, like getting vaccines and getting into that vet. And they, to be fair to that staff and this local, Pacific, they were slammed as well. So we are literally just trying to clean up. There are literally thousands out there. You obviously are probably very familiar with that one female cat and then her having babies, and it's insane. We recently rescued one at Cow Bay at Broadwater, and it's a huge success. But the mom had 5 girls and 1 boy. 5 girls, right? So we're slowly making that dent, just like many other communities in Canada and the States around the world. It's, if you don't have it, you're gonna just see insane amount of suffering, and then disease will build, parvo and feline leukemia, and that's then you're going to have to make decisions. I think at council level, are you going to start taking some of them out in a way that your public is not going to like, right? So we're trying to do it in a humane fashion. I won't lie, it's daunting, it's overwhelming, but there's some success happening, and I think this is proof what we've done and established in the last 2.5 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other, Councillor Adey?
Just thank you for your responses.
Councillor Niche.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of space would be ideal for you if you had a space?
A small room. We're not asking for much. It would be nice to stand up in one where you're not hitting your head in the basement. You know what some of the wartime homes are like. And we've done it. We've just done it because we're resilient and we're just wanting to do it. But honestly, a small space, a room that has an entryway, that could be done at 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night. That's when our best trapping can happen. And then just, or early in the morning, that would be honestly ideal. And to have something that they're safe to recover in, that's warm and safe for them. And then they're released a few days later. It's not it's not like weeks of recovery, right? So that's what we're ideally looking for.
Okay,
Thank you for asking.
Thanks.
Councillor Cunningham.
First of all, I'd like to thank you and the society, and I know Kim's been sort of pushing this for as long as I've known her, and that's a long time. That's why they call her the cat lady. And she wears that label proudly, I think. But I was told quite a few years ago that a healthy feral population is 10% of the actual population of the city. So, and anything above that is when you start running into disease and predatorial things like that. And that, so that sort of answers Council 80's question about where you should be. But how big of a shed would you actually need? 10 by 10 or?
I'd have to ask the board what their wish list is, but it's just something because I do post in pre-recovery, and I've done it in my shed, and another girlfriend, a few of us, in our garages or in our bathrooms, whatever we can have. It's you know, I think we're trying to help, and it'd be nice to have something that we could actually utilize in a space, again, to stand up, that has a lock and key, maybe like say a door that we can just freely go in and out and set it up and have our supplies. That would be just honestly amazing.
And if you were to have somebody help you build this, or get a couple people together to build it, and the materials, would you have a place to put it?
It's something to discuss with the city. We all have our own places or properties, but of course it's Prince Rupert. We don't have, unfortunately, acreage like Terrace or Smithers. We're very limited with our lot sizes. A conversation to hopefully be open and to discuss.
And the other thing is, it's 1-800-PAUSE if people want to get a hold of you to
Yeah,
donate.
I was
them.
teasing, but we do have our own cell. If you do look on our page, it's there. Kim set that up in October. It's shared every so many weeks with our board members, so it gives them a good chance and a good perspective of what's involved. We put many fires out. You have people that call you in desperation, and you're just trying to weed through it and just be calm and have grace with how you handle people and things. It's not an easy job. We are all volunteers, right? We rather go to Hawaii sometimes, sure. Why not, right?
Okay, what I'm getting at is 1-800-PAUSE if anyone wants to donate money or that.
Actually, it's
778
788-884-6663.
Yeah, we do have
Say
our,
that again.
of course.
Say it again.
778.
Into the
Okay,
microphone.
sure. 778-884-6663. So people who have any kind of, we'll try and help you. We'll try and set you up with other rescues. Again, we work in partnerships with all the other ones. So many of these people are very desperate, and they're losing their apartment tomorrow, or they want to go to the transition house yesterday, or they're going to rehab on a plane Monday, and you're just trying to literally make it work for them, because you're like, it's kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're the last hope. You know what I mean? Honest to God, sometimes for these people, it's that one little straw, that one little, please do this one good thing so I'm okay. So you're looking at the social economics and the whole mental, wellness of people as well. It's tied into a cat. You'd be surprised of all those different layers to all of this. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Trust me, there's a lot of people in town who appreciate what you do.
Councillor Skelton Morvan.
I just want to thank you for your presentation, and I think kind of the testament to the community's empathy and compassion is really how we treat our less fortunate, which is also, our furry friends that need us to advocate for them because they don't have a voice. So just thank you to all of your volunteers, and I know many not-for-profit organizations that are probably very jealous of your 60 volunteers. Yeah, aside from the SPCA.
They certainly are, and again, thank you for that. We're very lucky, and thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Sorry? No, you're not. Absolutely not in conflict. No. No, absolutely not.
It'd probably be 100 if it's from Terry. Just saying.
Thank you all so much for all the work that you do. You are all absolutely amazing, and we really appreciate you coming and giving voice to the animals that don't have one. And just to plug out for the auction, you already know I'm donating a ton of stuff. I've got bags. But please, to everybody that's watching and listening, if you can't donate money, you can always bid on an auction item to get something for Mother's Day, because that's coming up for all of you that aren't aware. Just another plug.
It is a Mother's Day theme. Thank you, Terry, for pointing that out. So we got you covered, and it's all local businesses that are supporting us, right? So gift cards and gift baskets or artwork or whatever. So these are all like-minded people that you might not even think are a cat person or whatever. It's not about a cat. I'll just tell you, it could be hedgehogs. Honestly, for me, it is animal advocacy. Okay, so that little guy you saw on the left in the very first beginning photograph, which if you bought a PERS calendar, who bought one? I know this guy did, and I know she'd had one. They're part of the fire hall, and they were within a few weeks stabilized and healthy. So we thought they were well worth the effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Is there any desire to make a motion here to refer to staff, or yeah, go ahead.
I would like to make a motion to refer to staff to look at whether or not there is space available that could help with this.
Okay. Seconded, Councillor Randawa. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's carried. That will, I think, have to go to the main meeting, will it not? Anyway, we'll figure out the process. My very first connection with Prince Rupert was kittens. And I was a baggage handler in Vancouver with no idea I would ever end up in Prince Rupert. This was in the late 70s, early 80s, and there was no SPCA in Prince Rupert. And so people would bring down, exactly as you described, and I kind of got sucked in because a friend of mine was looking for a kitten for his kids. And so I carried the kittens out. I hand carried them out to the person. They said, well, I'm from Rupert and I'm just taking them to the SPCA. I said, why don't I take them? Because I know my friends want a kitten. By the time I got a hold of him, he already had a kitten. So I had to get rid of all the kittens. But anyway, that was my very first connection to Prince Rupert in any way, shape, or form. Thanks so much for coming. All right, the next item on the agenda is the 2023 proposed budget. Recommendation is that council recommend the inclusion of a 12.5% property tax increase to balance the 2023 budget, and that council approves the budget as presented. Dr. Buchan, did you want to launch this, or do I go directly?
Your
Dr.
Worship,
Buchan.
I will defer to Director Bobbin.
All right, Director Bauman.
Thank you. So on March 22nd, staff presented the draft budget and requested council to postpone direction to staff until after public feedback was obtained and final BC assessment numbers were received. Staff prepared budget documents for council outlining the cost to maintain service at existing levels, address health and safety, and capital projects to be approved and undertaken during the fiscal year and beyond. The budget included a recommendation to increase the mill rate by 15.7% to balance the budget, which has since been reduced to 12.5%. All documents, including a budget simulator, were made available to the public to read and interact with. The budget simulation was open for 4 weeks, and the compilation of results is included in the report in front of you today. Since the draft budget was released, there have been a couple changes to the water and sewer utility capital plans, which have been identified in the report for council. The changes made to existing capital requests utilize grants, surplus, and reserves. One new capital request has been added to the sewer utility and relates to the water works that needs to be conducted. For efficiency, while the water works are in progress, it makes sense to replace the wastewater infrastructure, which is of the same vintage. The city is currently working on getting grants for this. However, presently it is anticipated that the city will need to fund this work through borrowing. With the information provided from the public and the information provided by staff to maintain existing service levels, council is asked to refer its decision on the proposed budget to the regular meeting of council today, so staff may prepare the 5-year financial plan bylaw and related tax rate bylaw, which must be adopted by May 12th of this year. Thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments, council? Councillor Forster.
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. There is note of 3 staff positions in the budget. I'm not certain I fully understand what all 3 are for. I'm wondering if we could get a bit more of an explanation on those.
All right. Director Bombin, did you want to speak to that?
Sure, that will be fine. It was the justification pages were included in the original budget, but I can just say that they are in. One is for an HR generalist, one is for an IT technician, and another is a half-time position to assist payroll. So as many people know, it is very difficult to fill positions right now. A lot of people have a lot of vacancies. The city is no exception at the moment. So there is a lot of work for attracting, reviewing applications, interviewing, and then trying to offer positions and competing with other organizations to try and get staff in our doors to fill positions and still conduct all the same services that we need to do. This has made it very difficult for our one HR individual to maintain and to also continue to maintain a good work environment for our 150 full-time staff members. So they're essentially, this individual is swamped, and in order to try and keep us staffed accordingly, we want to try and help alleviate the pressure that's there. For the IT department, it is the same. They are short-staffed in that department, and although the budget document indicates a full-time position for a full year, we are partway through the year, so it is anticipated that the budget request there was actually a little bit over now. It'll be less, so that probably would be a 3/4 position at the moment, with a quarter being in the following fiscal year. But again, it's the same thing. The individual, we're doing a lot of capital projects, and therefore our IT manager needs to help integrate a lot of the IT processes into these new capital projects, specifically our SCADA water and sewer communication systems. And they're dealing with so much, over 100 users per IT staff member that we have here. It's excessive in comparison to many of the other communities that we did consult with, particularly the neighbors that are of the same size. We are still, we have way more, the ratio is out of this world for our staff members. So we're trying to alleviate a lot of the extra workload that is going on for in that department. And that's the reason for the one staff request there. And HR is closely integrated with payroll. Same situation when you still have lots of people turning over, more people being onboarded, being brought in, set up into the system. And also with all the new legislative changes that are happening, many WorkSafe claims, because WorkSafe claims are now broadened. So there is more situations where we have staff going on WorkSafe. So that just creates a lot more work, and so we're swamped in that section as well. So we're asking for a half-time position for that to try and help in that department. So that is the 2.5 positions, actually probably more like 2.25 positions that we have asked for. All told, it's about a 1% of the 12.5%, which equates to $17 for the average assessed homeowner. Thank you.
Councillor Forster.
Thank you for that explanation. That's very helpful. My next question is about the landfill bulldozer. I understand from Mr. Higginson when we had our first initial discussion that it's currently being rented at a cost of approximately $10,000 per month. Has a cost-benefit analysis been done to discuss the difference between renting versus leasing versus buying? Just because with depreciation, I understand we have a lot of staff that can do a lot of the maintenance on it, but with vehicles depreciating each year, I'm just wondering why we would buy versus lease.
Director Bombin.
Purchasing the vehicle, number one, means that we're not continually paying for the vehicle like we have been doing lately. So now, then we actually own it and we can go ahead and replace it as need be. The cost of it is actually, the rental cost has actually gone up from 10,000. I think it's up to about 15,000 at the moment. So the to continue to pay $15,000 every single month when the repayment on the borrowing that we're proposing for 5 years is going to be even much less than that, means that then we will have ownership of that vehicle, and we'll never run into the situation where the owner of that particular vehicle ever decides to recall it, and we run into problems with continuing service, and running also into issues where we don't have any other options and they can go ahead and increase the rates.
Any other questions, Councillor?
One last one, and I'll let everybody else have their turns. The sidewalk program that is mentioned in the budget, forgive my ignorance, I don't know how many feet this is actually going to cover. I know it's expensive, I just don't know. I assume we're not getting everywhere done, so I'm just wondering approximately how much space.
Director Bauman.
I would like to defer that to Director Pucci.
Director Pucci.
Thank you. Through the chair, it varies from sidewalk to sidewalk. So slimmer sidewalks can be anywhere between $750 to $1,000 a meter. The larger sidewalks are quite a bit more. The ones on, say, 3rd Avenue, 2nd Avenue, they're double width. So we get quite a bit less. We try and go in and we choose an area that has a health and safety hazard, or if a health and safety hazard gets identified to the city, then we try and use the money to fix those up. Also, we look at areas that don't have letdowns for baby carriages and wheelchair accesses. So we look ahead of time, try and figure out some areas to do, and then we always leave some for health and safety. So it does vary, but minimum would be about $750 to $1,000 per meter. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Adey.
One of my questions was asked. Thank you. Sort of a supplemental question about the human resources area. And I understand that there's a balance to be struck between maintaining an effective workforce and economizing as much as you can in the interest of doing so. The question has already touched on the new staffing requests. I'm wondering if you can offer some comment on any ongoing or new efforts to economize the incidental costs of work. So I'm thinking about things like travel costs. Are we looking at identifying those trips that need to happen because there is a clear benefit to traveling and meeting with people in person versus those that could be done remotely? And still on the travel, are we prepared to look at perhaps changing the size of the delegations? We send 2 people instead of 3. Those kinds of things. Materials, transport costs, and so on. So I'm interested in whether there's kind of an ongoing attention being paid to that.
Director Bauman.
The short answer is yes. There's always we're always looking for efficiencies in bulk ordering, that sort of thing, for materials, transportation. If you can get everything all in one transport rather than multiple, we're always looking for those opportunities. And I think that's because our staff have been trained for many, many years, back to the days when the current mayor was the mayor previously, and we had a large downsizing in the community. So we've been trained well in advance of many others that have had to start looking at these things. But I will also address the travel costs. Ever since the pandemic, I actually haven't had a lot of Zoom meetings, probably meet more now with people that are from outside the community than ever have. And I know all of the other staff have been doing that as well. We try to only travel when absolutely necessary. Many of our staff now attend conferences virtually instead of going in person. But then there's also other opportunities where the need to go ahead and meet in person is well worth the cost. For instance, the $65 million grant that we got from the province, that was not because we went and did virtual meetings. Our Dr. Buchan and Director Pucci worked very hard on that, and the relationships built through personal interaction was huge. And so the ROI on that, on those particular travel costs, was worth it there. So we definitely pay attention to that. Costs of traveling go up, just like everything else. So we have to pay particular attention and be selective.
Before you continue, Councillor, Dr. Buchan, did you have anything to add?
Your Worship, I think that it was covered very nicely by Director Bauman.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor.
And to be fair, just to finish on that one. I think that council has travel as well, and I think the same questions apply to the choices we make in that respect as well. I think that, you know, as events come up and as meeting opportunities come up, I think we always have to filter that a little bit and try to be efficient. My second question is with regard to the capital costs. Now I know that prior to presenting the list of requests, a lot of work went into parsing the kinds of requests that would be categorized as wants versus those that would be categorized as needs. And I'm certainly not in a position to question staff expertise on, you know, whether this machine is the best machine for this job or not. I'll trust the expertise there. I do think that I'm curious about if this list represents the needs. Can you give us examples of potential requests that didn't make the list so we can get a sense of that process? And also, I'm wondering whether there is attention paid to requests that are prioritized as needing to be done immediately versus potentially being deferred, and whether there's any distinctions being drawn there.
Director Bombin.
Yeah, so I'll say that when the capital budgets come to us, we evaluate based on health and safety, what's mandated. That obviously takes some precedence, both of those. And then needed for service, or potentially having to recommend closing the service. So that is the benchmark for us. I can say that we've got about $4 million in rolling equipment, so mobile equipment that we deferred, which is on a schedule because the city did not replace things in the past. Much like everything else, everything needs to be replaced all now. So there is a schedule of recommended rolling stock, for instance, that should get replaced, and we really do scale that back. And so what we carved off about $4 million and we've deferred it into future years, and it's been determined based on the health and safety mandated needed for service bench line.
Councillor.
Thank you. One more, and that's with regard to the debt. I understand that given the current revenue pressures and despite continuing efforts to address them, we're approaching our borrowing limit under the regulations. And I note that the new request to borrow $20 million towards the sewage, twinning the sewage, and I understand the logic behind doing so. But we're told that this does get us towards our borrowing limit. And I can say, just to personalize the example, as a homeowner, I know what our debts are, and I'm pretty accurate in knowing, you know, when the car payments are going to end so that I can go and do something else. So but what I'm wondering is there a public-facing way to provide information regarding specific debt items and costs on a sort of a total or annual or monthly payment basis, where we are in terms of when particular items are going to be paid off so that space is created, the source of the funding for paying them. I know some come from reserves, some from taxes and so on. And then the hardest part, and I appreciate that nobody's got a crystal ball, but is there anything that's sort of anticipated in terms of future items?
Director Bombin.
Thank you. On our webpage, actually, in the finance section, we do have a schedule that has been uploaded recently to talk about what the payments are over the next 5 years. In the financial statements, it is a backward-looking document, albeit, but it does actually indicate what years the debentures are going to be ending, when they were taken out. So that also is further information. And the 5-year financial plan, actually, in the budget document, I think on page 34, it talks about some of the anticipated borrowing that we figured we were doing when we first did the draft. Obviously, the $20 million for the sewer works is now added. And that's just the items that we know that we're going to be doing. Other items we're still looking for funding for, and so we haven't put out there that we're probably going to be borrowing for that while we're still trying to do the legwork to get funding for those particular future capital items.
Councillor Ady.
So just as a follow-up to that, what you've done is referred to 2 or 3 different places. And I guess what I'm asking about is whether there's a way to kind of pull that together into a simpler format that is more easily understood by people like myself who don't always know everything I need to know about accounting. I think there may be a benefit in terms of transparency with the public in finding a way to do that.
Director Bauman.
Happy to take this suggestion. Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, just a couple, like the GPS truck system. I don't think that exists right now, and I see a cost of $300,000 for that.
I'm
And
sorry, I
vehicles-
missed. Sorry for what?
It's under vehicles and mobile equipment.
Yeah.
The-
Director Bauman.
Sorry, through the chair, the GPS truck system cost is proposed at $50,000.
I've got it here borrowing $300,000. Oh,
I'm sorry, that would be
that's
the Sander
a
plow.
Okay, sorry, I got my lines mixed up.
There you go.
It happens with old eyes.
Councillor Skelton Morven.
Okay,
Oh, sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
and we've got a collection truck for $400,000. Did we not just buy a couple?
Go ahead, Director Bauman. I'm
Yes,
getting confused already.
through the chair. Yes, actually, we have 2 vehicles, and that was so that we can continue to maintain weekly service for all residents, so we could collect both the recycling and the refuse. Whereas before we were just collecting refuse, so you can imagine that ended up doubling our work.
So as I understand it now, we have 2 trucks,
Yes, we've had 2 trucks
and we're doing recycling and collection right now. And
on a
this will-
weekly basis.
and this is going to be a 3rd truck?
No, this is the 2nd truck. So we leased it, and now
Oh.
this is the buyout option.
Okay. And then for the Civic Center, you've got $160,000 for management.
Director Bauman.
Are you referring to the capital budget? Is that the miscellaneous recreation capital of 100,000?
Right here. Civic improvements management, 160.
That's the downtown revitalization, and it's under special projects.
Okay.
Yes, it was 160,000, 58,000 of which is grant, and so it's downtown revitalization and asset management. So 50,000 of it was funded through grants, and 110 was funded through dividend
From Legacy.
And
Yeah.
dividend is legacy.
from Legacy. Yes.
Just so we're clear.
Okay, and I want to reiterate that sometimes travel looks a little expensive, but, you know, Director Bauman sort of covered it. Like, we had the Herb, we had the mayor, and 2 staff go down and meet with the premier several times, and of that, we got $65 million. So, you know, when you look at the travel versus the result, I don't think there's any argument there at all. And I know there's going to be more travel on that, hopefully with the federal government, and hopefully we get the same results. And, you know, I don't want people to think people are just traveling for the sake of traveling. We're definitely getting some results from this travel. And we also are looking at lots of other options to cut costs right now that, you know, we might not bear this thing. One question I have is that in the 12.5 percent increase, how much of that is actually inflation costs?
Director Bauman.
It would be approximately about 7.5%, just over that with the RCMP.
So that's including the retro pay for the RCMP for the new contract that we had no control over?
Director Bauman.
No, the retro pay was already accrued. We knew approximately how much it was going to be in the 2021 budget, and so we pulled it out of reserves. There's an RCMP reserve, and so we have already funded that. So this is just for the wage increases with the RCMP union.
So if you take the actual inflation factor out of the 12.5, we're down to around 5-6% increase.
Yeah,
Director Bauman.
about 4% being the loss in PILT and 1% being the staff additions.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Skelton Morgan.
I just want to thank Director Bondon and our senior staff just for the work that they've done on this budget, and I just know firsthand the challenges that kind of comes with this. Making the investments in people, I think, and systems, especially as we continue to scale, go through different systems, and all of these other upgrades that we're experiencing, on top of the hyper-economic activity that we're having in our neighborhoods right now. And just as a region as a whole, you know that those investments have to be made. So for us to opt out of that and put strain on our existing staff, which are already overworked, that's just to me is a no-brainer to make the investment and continue trucking along. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from council? I have a couple of. One is for you, Director Pucci, and Director Pucci, feel free to comment on anything else that was said before. But we are proposing a $1 million road budget. How big a road budget do we need to be keeping up with our? I mean, we're falling behind at $1 million a year. Is that correct?
Yes, through the chair. So we are absolutely falling behind. So in advanced money from the last report that we did, we should be around $2.2 million per year invested into our roads to annually keep up with them, with the average lifespan. This year's $1 million paving budget, the community will not see much pavement associated with that. There's a lot of areas open that are gravel right now that have been repairs over the holiday season, and a lot of the money will be going to repair and repave those areas.
And sorry, any comments on anything that was discussed preceding there?
No, Director Bauman, she absolutely nailed it. Thanks.
All right. And Director Bauman, you were talking about borrowing. It's a good opportunity to just talk about the process of borrowing. There's limitations on what we can borrow. There's processes we have to go through to borrow. Do you want to talk about those real briefly?
Yeah, so we're much like with a homeowner, your salary or your income basically determines how much you can go ahead and borrow. So we're no different. We have a significant capital plan that we need to address over the next 10 years, and our borrowing ability is very diminished based on our revenues and also because of inflation at the moment and the interest rate costs. So we are having to be very careful about what we select to borrow for. Again, it's coming down to what's mandated and what's needed for health and safety. But there is a process. If council goes ahead and approves this capital budget with the whole 5-year financial plan, then staff will be coming forward with a loan authorization bylaw, much like we did with the RCMP and we did with the water dam loan and the landfill loan. And the council can go ahead and direct whether we are going to go through the alternative approval process or if we go to a referendum. And then the public will have a say on whether or not they're okay with us borrowing the funds that we need in order to conduct the work. And that generally takes about 6 months.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Niche, I don't think you've spoken yet. Councillor Forster.
This is a question for Mr. Pucci. Basically, with all this road work potentially coming with the new water lines, new sewer lines, has there been any thought to moving to concrete roads? As it seems like the lifespan of a concrete road, like I happen to be working on one right now, and these are 40-year-old neighborhoods. Uh, you know, and the lifespan of the roads, they seem to be quite good. They last, they seem to last a long time. I mean, some people may not like the clunk 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 down the road every time, but you know, I look at some of our paving program in the last few years, and it doesn't take long for this pavement to break down, especially with a poor subgrade. So has there been any thought to any new roads that are getting replaced or built as to putting concrete in?
Director Pucci.
Thank you. Through the chair, we did an analysis last year after the councillor brought it up, and we the numbers are quite a bit more for concrete roads, and then there's also you can do them cast in place, or you can also bring in slabs and precast slabs, which is also very expensive. The lifespan is more. That is correct. But we felt that for repairs and doing everything that we have in town, and us being able to work on them was probably more cost efficient for us to just continue with asphalt pavement. Also, our program right now, the money that we have is for pipe replacement and replacement of the area that we need to get into the pipe. So we may, in some areas, only be digging up half the road. And we would like to do the sewer, which then maybe means we do the other half. But at this point right now, if we just continue with water in some areas, we'd just be doing half the road, and you can't really have half road concrete and half road asphalt. So we would put it back as asphalt. But we will continue with the analysis. We did it last year. It would be quick to look at it again to just see for longevity, especially if we do all new infrastructure and we won't have to touch it again for a long time. It may be better for us to spend a little bit more now and get a product that has that extra lifespan. So we will take that away and look at it again. Thank you.
Councillor Forster.
Thanks. Nobody asked these other two questions. One of them's a bit silly, I think, but I'm going to ask it anyway. The streetlight replacement program, 25 grand from dividends and 25 grand from taxation. So it's not something that would make or break the budget or make a huge difference in the percent, but I'm curious why it's not 100% dividend. Why is it half and half? It just...
Director Bombin.
The $25,000 in taxation is already included from prior year budgets, so we just left it as is. It wouldn't be an increase. It's just maintaining status quo.
Okay, thank you. Through the mayor.
Yep.
And my second one, at the very back of the budget presentation, you've got some possible courses of action, including cut non-essential recreation upgrades. I'm curious what non-essential recreation upgrades would mean.
Who wants to tackle that one?
I can advance
Director Bauman.
I can advance it over to our corporate administrator, who's also our director of recreation.
I think it's worth the public noting that a number of our staff members carry several portfolios. We are definitely not overstaffed at the top. Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certain examples of a non-essential recreation item might be replacement of lights, replacement of fixtures that are still good and usable, but could look at a replacement of upgrades. So what we focus on this year is anything that's health and safety related, things that are required in order to have the programs run and keep people health and safety.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, just want to clarify. So I think maybe I'm misunderstanding, because non-essential means we don't have to have it. So those all sound like things to me that we do need to have so people can see for safety.
Right. And I think the page you're speaking from are potential cost cutting that could have occurred should council choose.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Director Miller.
Yes, thank you. Just to clarify, so it certainly, we won't have everyone in the dark. It would be to replace with nice to haves, not needs to haves.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Buchan, you haven't spoken. Have you got anything you'd like to say?
At this point, no. I think that it's been covered extremely well by the directors.
All right. So the recommendation is in front of you. It would, if we vote on it, recommendation is to recommend the inclusion of a 12.5% property tax increase. I think we could have a motion to simply pass this recommendation on to the regular meeting, because I don't think any councillor wants to vote finally on this until we've had an opportunity for comment, for the last comments from the public. Would that be fair? And so can I have a motion to refer this to the regular council meeting? Okay. Councillor Adie, I saw first. Councillor Skelton Morven. Any discussion? Is that clear to staff?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Questions, inquiries from members of council? I'm kind of thinking you don't have any at this point in time. All right. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn to the regular council meeting. Councillor Skelton Morven, Councillor Niche. All in favor? Any opposed? The committee of the whole is adjourned, and we will go into regular council meeting. And I will call to order the regular council meeting of April the 24th. Are there any late items for introduction? There are not. Then I would call on a motion to approve the agenda. Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Niche. Any additions, deletions? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We are now at the public comments regarding any item coming up on the agenda, and so that includes the budget because it's been referred to the regular council meeting. Any member of the public that wishes to come forward. There's not very many members of the public here, so I appreciate that, but any member of the public that would like to come forward, feel free to come and sit at the microphone. I want to emphasize that this is called public comments regarding agenda items, just so that there's no anticipation that it's not a question and answer time. It is not expected. There will be lots of opportunities if people have questions. I'm always available. We can either by email or by appointment, we can have questions answered for folks. But if you've got comments or whatever, it's your, identify yourself and take it away. Thanks for coming, by the way.
Hi, my name's Terry Salka. I'm a Prince Rupert resident, a taxpayer since 1974. I was here last week and I get kind of cut off. So I'm just going to continue on with the budget. I've had all week to go through it. There's a lot of X's and O's and things like that. I view this as a Christmas wish budget. There's things in here that are curious, and I'll start off with, there's some items here that have been approved last year. I'm assuming they were approved in the 2022 budget, but have never been purchased, and they've been pushed onto this budget. One is the fire truck. $1.3 million plus 7% was approved to be purchased last year. It wasn't, but I'm assuming, and I could stand to be corrected, was the 1.3 million in 2022 used elsewhere, or where did it go?
I'm so trying not to turn this into a question and answer session.
Well, you could make a note.
But yeah, fair enough. And I'll tell you what, ask. You keep asking questions, and we'll see how we do.
So then I looked at the other equipment, and if you total the amount of money that's been borrowed, and it's interesting that we're at the end point of borrowing money. it comes out to almost $4,000.
For
Sorry, $4 million. And the subject was raised about looking at leasing or buying or purchasing. Um, there were some answers back on the renting, but never an answer on the leasing. You know, a lease works. You lease it for 3 years. After 3 years, you send the thing back, and it's gone. Anything breaks down in the meantime, generally depends what kind of lease you sign. The leaser is responsible for the maintenance of that equipment. I'm familiar with the leases because when I worked at the pulp mill, I'm a mechanic by trade. A lot of the equipment at the mill was leased, and so that's so then taking that 4 million and using a number that when we got 1 million from City West, had reduced the amount from 15% to 12%. So I'm kind of using this number. So if 4 million is brought down through leasing as opposed to borrowing, that should be probably another 3.5% that the budget would be reduced by. Now, on page,
one of the challenges with that is you'd still have a payment. No matter what you do, you still have a payment.
You still have a payment.
So you got to take the 4 million, set it aside, and say what would be the amount of your payment versus amount of your lease payment versus the amount of your rent payment. All of that will require
all that
a
comes
budget.
into a factor, right?
Yeah. Okay.
But at the end of the day, they come very close because your equipment time is based on hours, not how many miles you drive back and forth on the garbage dump, right?
Right. Continue.
So the other question I have here is on page 75. There's a wastewater, and it's listed twice, and the money's generated comes from utility fees. So I'm assuming that utility fees means that water and garbage and
yeah, you
whatever
assume correctly.
Is money will be generated from the utilities.
Correct.
So when my utilities go up, I pay more. And if I have a rental unit and my utilities go up, the renter pays more. So if you take all that and the increase to the budget, at the end of the day, the renter pays more. And for the longest period of time, I've heard councils talking about the exorbitant rates that renters are paying in Prince Rupert. What do you think that this budget's going to do to those rental rates right now? They're going to go up. They're going to go up. The other item that comes out to me is the lease agreement between the city of Prince Rupert and McCarthy's property. It's my understanding that the city is currently paying $25,000 a month to lease that property. And I could be corrected here that the lease isn't finalized. And if it isn't finalized, why are we paying $25,000 a month for quite a few months already, apparently, at the taxpayer's expense?
I believe the lease is finalized, just to be clear. It's the purchase agreement that's being worked on.
I recall asking last week whether the lease was finalized, and I didn't really get an answer on that. So out of that, I see in here that there's a further $2 million cost to the taxpayers of Prince Rupert to renovate a fairly new building. The front end of that building is fairly new. I've been in there several times when I was looking at purchasing a car. Good thing I didn't, because shortly after that they pulled up shop and left. So $2 million is a lot of money to create another Taj Mahal in Prince Rupert. And I just wondered whether at this time and date something like that is a necessity in Prince Rupert, to create another Taj Mahal. That kind of money could be spent where the current city works is, and I'm sure it would be a lot easier to spend $2 million there than to renovate and create offices, more offices. The last item I have is the proposed creation of a swamp, a pilot project in the middle of our island. And I'm sure 25, 30, 40 years down the road, someone's going to stand up and say, why did we do that? It's not a proven factor. It's going to channel all the water and whatever else down to that area there. There's been no environmental studies done, no approval by the government, provincial or federal, but we're already included in the budget a fair amount of money to go ahead with the project. And the last thing I'm going to say is that, you know, I've gone through this. There's quite a bit of stuff here, and like I said, it's like a Christmas list. But what I'm going to say to this council is that you've taken a note, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Prince Rupert, not to managers who want a new truck or pet peeve projects that they think that they should have. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much for coming both nights. Appreciate it. Is there any other member of the public that would like to come and address council at this time? For those at home, I'm giggling because the other members in the audience are doing this. No. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. I'm absolutely sincere when I say thanks for coming and commenting. It's what that time on the agenda is for, and I value the opportunity that we've given to members of the public to come and do that. With that, then, I'm going to move on. There is the consent agenda in front of you. Council minutes are included. There's correspondence, board highlights from the North Coast Regional Districts. Thank you from special events. Request for support. And I would assume that if we're passing the package as a group, we're agreeing to support the request. Announcement of a virtual open house, as well as a report from the manager of communications with regards to engagement and social development. Can I have a motion to approve all of that? Councillor Adey, Councillor Randhawa. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you. We move on to reports. Reports from the corporate administrator with regards to the committee of the whole. Given that we're all there, I think we know what it is, but go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's actually two. The first would be that council approves the recommendation from the committee of the whole with respect to the request from PERS.
Directing staff.
Correct.
to-
Directing staff to work with PERS.
Correct. So there's a motion. Why don't you move it again?
I just had a quick question. Am I allowed to add to that original motion?
Yeah, of
I-
course.
I-
Why don't you first of all move the motion,
Okay.
and then we'll deal with amending the motion.
The motion is to direct staff to research an appropriate space for a building as suggested by PERS.
Right.
I
And
think
is
that was
there
how I worded it. Something like
something to that effect? Is there a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Skelton Morvan. Now you'd like to amend that motion.
that. I'm wondering if I could add that has access to water. They didn't mention it, but in my 9 to 5 job as a nurse, I recognize they're probably going to need to have access to water. And while that wasn't something that they mentioned,
Okay.
I think even a long hose would still be sufficient.
Excellent.
Just, I think a sink.
Given you're the mover, that's a friendly amendment. The seconders in favor. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We then move on to item number 2. Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next would be the council approve the recommendation from the committee of the whole with respect to the 2023 budget.
So let's get a motion on the floor just so that we have something to discuss. Sorry, I'm digging through, and that would be the motion that was in the committee of the whole package, if I could, which would be, why can't I find my?
I can read it for you.
Would
Mr.
you?
Mayor. Of course.
Thank you.
That council recommend the inclusion of a 12.5% property tax increase to balance the 2023 budget, and that council approves the budget as presented.
Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Skelton Morvan, is there a seconder? Councillor Adey. All right, discussion on that motion. Councillor Cunningham.
You know, I want to go back to the fact that when I asked the question earlier about if we took the inflation rate out of that, what the actual budget increase would be. And, you know, and people have said that, you know, we shouldn't be increasing the budget with a high inflation rate. Well, the city has no control over inflation. And we, like everyone else in the city, have to buy gas and everything else, and everything's gone up. So it has to go up. You know, if you take the inflation rate, like I asked earlier, out of it, it's 4 or 5%, which everyone can accept. If you put the inflation rate that we have no control over into it, then guess what? You know, and we've got a new CUPE contract. People get raises. You know, I know it's a hard pill to swallow, but at the same time, you know, I really tend to disagree with the resident there about a wish list and that. Some of this stuff is necessary. I've talked to some of the people that actually uses equipment, and they all think it's a good idea to have it. It makes their jobs easier and more efficient, saves time, energy, and I just think that at the end of the day, this is not an unrealistic budget increase. You know, and I own 2 properties, I'm going to have to pay twice. So, you know, I'm into it just as much as anyone else.
Any other comments? Councillor Adey.
I'd like to comment in 2 parts, and I might save the second part for a little bit later. I just want to acknowledge the questions, and perhaps there's an opportunity for us to, given the awkwardness of question and answers in the committee of the whole, maybe if I can do my best to ask a couple of those questions and see what we can find out. Because, as you have said, I think the whole point of having that item in the agenda is to create a dialogue with the public, and I think we need to respect that. So, if I could, maybe one at a time. One question was with respect to a fire truck that was on last year's budget, and presumably with an allocated fund. Was that money spent on other stuff, or is it? I'm not quite sure how to phrase the question as it was brought to us, but maybe through you, if I could get
Director
some
Bombin.
information there.
Yes, thank you. I remember what the question was. So it was, what did we do with the money that was approved from last year? Well, it was proposed to be borrowed last year, so we didn't borrow it. So nothing was done with the money. What we did do was we ended up ordering it. Delivery was going to be, I believe it was 18 months from the time of ordering. So everything is taking a very long time to order and get put together. So, and at the time, we actually had to do a budget amendment. Not a budget amendment, sorry. We got directed from council to increase the amount to $1.3 million because the amount that we had approved initially didn't cover the cost. So we were directed to increase it and include it in this budget. And so we did not use the money last year because we never actually borrowed it.
Councillor Ady.
Okay, I'll just move through these. With respect to, I think the borrowing and the leasing, I think there's, I think we kind of touched on in all events you end up paying, and I'm going to make the case that I assume that in making those choices we look for the best deal possible. I do acknowledge that if we go ahead and raise property taxes or take actions that result in raised utility fees, there is a knock-on effect with regard to rentals. I think that's going to happen. It's one of the unfortunate realities of this question as a global question is that we're going to end up with ripples, and we could all wish that it wasn't so, but that's the reality of these things, and we have to make a decision based on whether the results of tossing the stone in the water are worth the ripples that are uncomfortable that result from it. And I think that's a metaphoric way of saying what our choice is. With respect to, I'll skip to the liquid waste pilot project. Some questions around the kind of background research that went into it. Now, I do know that there is, to simplify it, more to the story, and so maybe I'm assuming through you it would go to Director Pucci in terms of the research behind it, and particularly I think whether this is technology that has also been applied in other places and how that's gone, because I think there is more background. I think this would be a good time to just summarize that.
Director Pucci, can you speak to the pilot project around wastewater treatment?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So through the chair, so this pilot project, this technology is widely used in Europe. I mean, it's been used for a long time. It's used on the East Coast right now, and it's used in more northern and more remote communities, and is very effective. It's there's other communities around our size, just over 10,000 to 15,000 people on the East Coast that use it. There's also one that's functioning in Alberta. The technology that we're looking at right now has a little bit of a proprietary part to it that a consulting company out of Alberta is bringing to us. It is we've built a stakeholders group around the federal government, governing body, Environment Canada, and the Ministry of Environment. They both have worked with us on our permitting for this, so they are in the know, and they are actually waiting and watching and very excited about this, because they know that if this moves forward the way that we all think it will, that it can be used in more remoter communities, local First Nations communities, and other communities that have similar climate to us. There was discussion about, is this a good spot for it? It's actually a really good spot for it. It is an activated wetland. This is a wetland area. However, it will be, the wetland will be disturbed so that we can put the right type of geosynthetics in and stuff to have it operate the way it should, and then be captured and tested before it's released. This type of technology should save us, if successful, will save us over $100 million in the long run, moving away from the classic treatment of big concrete buildings and that, and these will sort of fit into wetlands throughout our community. It is the type of technology you can. There isn't a way that you touch the product that's there. It's sort of sealed and encapsulated and percolates through after it's treated, so it's fully safe for the environment and the animals and birds. And we're really proud of it. This will take away the idea that we would have 3 large treatment facilities on our waterfront that would have to be placed there in our large catchment areas. So this will allow us to bring it to the back of the island in the wetland areas and have the treatment. So we are excited about this. The Ministry of Environment, the province, and the federal government are working with us on it, and they are excited to see this happen as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on that subject before I ask the next one, since we're here talking about money, there is a financial gain to be made by doing things this way. I wonder if you could just quantify that a little bit for us.
Director Pucci, how much money does it save us potentially?
We're looking at over $100 million saving compared to having 3 operational sewer treatment facilities. This technology also allows for more infiltration and weather flow. So if we were to do treatment the classic way, say on the waterfront or with these facilities, which we would need 3, they would all need to be staffed. They would all need to be highly ticketed people that would be in there, which is extremely hard to get level 4s. And also our whole system would need to be twinned because you would not want to treat the rainwater. So in our climate, we get a ton of infiltration into our system, which would then sort of overrun a treatment facility. You only want to treat what's called black water, and that's all you would want to treat. But in our community, we have in some areas 900 times what the flow should be because of infiltration, and that means you would have to treat all of that water before it went out. So this type of treatment allows for big bursts of infiltration to come in, and it doesn't harm the type of treatment. And it does not take any chemicals. It does it through a biofiltration type system. But yes, overall, it saves us quite a bit of money. And we have a feasibility study that shows it would be 11 of these small units that would go in throughout the community, and we would adjust our piping to fit and move the waste to them. Thank you.
Councillor Adey.
And the last one, with respect, the subject of the McCarthy Public Works project is the person that Terry. You're not the only one that's asked that question. I'll just put it that way. But I do recall it was the previous council when the idea was brought to us, and although the discussion was fulsome, I think the central point was the question of whether this was the most cost-effective and time-effective way to do what there was a consensus needed to be done, and that was to get the workforce out of unacceptably decrepit facility that they're in now. And the answer at that time came back, yeah, this is not only is it going to get us to the goal fastest, it's also going to be the most cost-effective way to do it. So I'm just, I guess I'm articulating the question again to see if the answer remains the same.
I'll start with Director Pucci. Have you got a comment on the McCarthy building, and then I'll sort of look around to see if anybody wants to add.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, yeah. At this point, we still believe it is the most cost effective. We know that we cannot geotechnically, the site that we have right now is not conducive to put new buildings on. We would have to do expensive piles and stuff. It is built on, when we've dug in there, that there is a garbage underneath that site. So it is that's what we found in certain areas. When we looked at it before, it was between about 5 to 7 million to do a building there. That was and then we did was we looked at this building that became available. We started a lease opportunity with it, and we are in the purchase or in the process of doing the purchase and sale agreement for a final purchase price. We started off with a budget last year, 750,000. We barely touched that, just because we were doing the planning exercise and doing the reviews. We've now know that due to health and safety regulations, the HVAC system in there needs to be updated, which is quite expensive. We are getting a second opinion on that because we want to make sure that we are doing just what is necessary. And we have also cut some of the offices and some of the spaces out to just what is required. And we are working on a functional assessment right now to ensure that we are only moving over the necessities. We don't intend to operate two separate yards. We intend to move all the staff over to the new building and have the yard, as we call it, operate as a materials handling area and storage area for larger equipment. So the fleet would start there in the morning, but all of our larger equipment would be at the other yard with all of the materials and pipe storage and larger equipment. Thank you.
Is that the list?
That's the list, and perhaps I'll make some space for others. I do have a kind of a final comment on the resolution, but I can wait.
Oh, that's fine. Before we proceed, Dr. Buchan, did you have any? We've gone through a lot, and I'm curious if Dr. Buchan, you've got anything to follow up.
Your Worship, I have nothing to add. I think it's all being covered very well.
Thank you. Director Bombin.
I just wanted to mention that the funding for the public works modifications is being funded from a dividend from legacy and not taxation.
Thank you. Councillor Niche.
Definitely in the last 8.5 years, I will say this is the hardest budget to have to look at. There's no doubt about that. I've been a strong opponent of tax raises over the last 8 years, and if you go back 8 years, we were probably on the higher end of taxes in comparison to other communities. But over the last however many years, the other communities have kind of caught up to us more. Not to say that we're cheap, but especially in our commercial rates. But we did a good job of keeping it lower. A lot of communities across the province struggled to do that, and we managed to do it mostly through our work on Watson Island. So doing a budget of, what is it, 12.5 or 12.3% is a tough pill to swallow. But when I look through this budget, there's nothing that I would consider fluff, which I see someone made a comment online about that. And it is a tough pill to swallow. But if we want our community to move forward, we don't want to be in the same position that our mayor was in 15 years ago, where they were making hard decisions of what services to cut. And I think if we want to attract people to this town, yes, they need to have low taxes, or we don't want to be the high ones, but we also need to have a community that they want to live in. So we need to invest in our community, and that's the only way we can do that is not cutting services. We need to keep places open, like the rec center and the golf course and all these places that will attract people to come here. We need our downtown cleaned up. We need buildings cleaned up so that we can attract people to want to live here. If we can attract more people to live here and people to build housing, then we will get more taxes, which will make it so we don't have to increase taxes. I'm going to go through a couple things that that were brought up through online and through this public consultation. Um, there was a couple comments about fire department. We are a compact community with houses that are very close together, businesses downtown that are very close together, most touching. So a paid fire hall is something that I do believe in, because I feel that a quick response is something that will hopefully save some buildings, some maybe not. Uh, Police, people commented also online about police. These are out of our control. I mean, I think the police asked for 36 officers, if I'm correct, and we have what, 32? Is that what it is?
Director Bauman.
31 through the chair.
31. So if we followed suit to what the ask of the RCMP, we would have 36 officers. We were, when I first got in, we were at 29. They were spending a lot of money on overtime just to try and keep the people working. So over the last couple of years, we've increased it by 2. So we're still 5 members short of what the ask is of the RCMP. And obviously this year, due to contract of RCMP, that's adding a big expense to our budget. McCarthy GM, the comments about McCarthy GM, the comment last week about, oh, you can put up a steel building and make it work. Well, McCarthy GM is a steel building. It's a building that is not really any frills. It's got some nice offices in the front that they did some work on a few years back. The new Longshore Hall, I believe, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $9 million to build. So the cost of building these days is a lot more than it was 10 or 5 years ago. There's been comments about McCarthy GM being, well, why don't you leave that for a dealership? Well, that place sat empty for how many years and a dealership didn't come. So it's not like we are taking it from the private industry to build a car dealership. There was nobody knocking on the door saying, let's build a car dealership. So it was in my eyes and in the eyes of the council that approved it, was an opportunity to get a building that suited our needs, to fulfill what we needed, and and not to spend the money of building a new building. And like I said, Longshore Hall will be a good example at $9 million. Another couple other comments online. More resources to road repairs. Well, we'd all love to have more road repairs, and like Mr. Pucci had said earlier, 2.2 million would be a more sustainable budget to keeping our roads up. And I hope that we can get there soon. I don't really want to raise taxes more this year to get to that 2.2 million, but hopefully with some negotiations with other parties, we can get to a point where we're collecting the appropriate amount of taxes in industry. What other comments was there? That's about it, I think. So at the end of the day, I looked through this budget, and a lot of it is funded through dividends, and there's some funding through borrowing. But a lot of our increases are based on inflation, and there is some some issues that we will hopefully be dealing with the Port Authority, as far as the implications of reduced tax collection from them, and hopefully we can work with them and make that better. But as of this year, there's nothing we can do about that. So it is very unfortunate to be in this position to have to look at a budget of this increase. But at the end of the day, I don't look through this budget and say that there is any bells and whistles. I look at it as maintaining a community and hopefully trying to improve a community that will attract more people to come.
Thank you. Councillor Cunningham.
Well, a lot of the comments are cut the fire department from a full-time to a volunteer. Well, other towns of our size that did have volunteers are now going to a complement of full-time and volunteers, and they're struggling to get volunteers. And this town here struggles to get volunteers right now. Even if we did it, it's not going to impact the budget this year or next year, because volunteer fire departments need to train up their volunteers. Getting volunteers in this town that are available 24/7 is just about impossible, because so many people work, as Councillor Neese said earlier, they work shift work. So they can't be available 24/7. And also, maybe we can share the cost with industry. That's something that's got to be looked at. But that was another suggestion made at that. And I think people look at the fire department as a big cash cow. It isn't. It's a very essential service, especially if you want to attract industry. Industry's not going to come to a town where if they build something and something happens, it's just going to disappear. And so I think we do definitely have an advantage having a full-time fire department, especially with the size of the port we've got and things like that. Will they share in the cost? Hopefully one day they will, but in the meantime, we've got to do it alone. McCarthy, we'll be moving in there soon. We'll have a nice facility, and I think if we were to replace that facility up at Wantage Road night, we're looking at $10-12 million if we're lucky. Not the original costs that were done years ago. I just think that in the end, we're getting a pretty good deal there. Yeah, it's a little slow, but every type of construction is slow right now. No one can find people to work. There's just everyone's tapped out. And I think our staff is pretty diligent watching the pennies and that. When you asked for a director to comment something, usually it's the same director in 2 or 3 different departments. Public has to know that they're all working and they're not dilly-dallying around. I just think that I think our staff's done a really good job, and cutting the fire department, I don't think is the answer. I think in the end it'll prove worthwhile.
Thank you. Councillor Randhawa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would like to thank our staff for doing great job on the budget. They well look out into, and I don't think we can make any cuts on anything, especially on the fire department, because to attract any new industry in this town, we need our full-time staff here. So I don't think we can do anything on that. But on the other side, I think it's a little bit too much for many people, especially people on the fixed income. Their income don't increase that way, like 12.5%, and also like any property tax increase will increase the rental market too, right, which is already very high and out of reach for many people. So in past, like when Pulp Mill was not running, and our community, they supported to maintain the building for many years. So our taxpayers, they paid and to keep that going, to maintain that building. And now we are fortunate, like we have Barcelona land going and start making money. And I saw many projects are go through by the Legacy Fund, and also City West, they chip into to help out our community. So I was wondering, like, if we can get little bit more money from Legacy this year to put in this budget, so our community can take a little more break on this one, because this is a year people are struggling with foods and all expenses, inflation, and so that's people's money too, that Legacy Fund. So I was wondering if we can get a little bit more help from that side and put in this budget, so people can have a little break. But I don't think we can make any cuts anywhere, but that's the only option I can see there.
So the question or suggestion is, can Legacy give us more this one year?
Yeah. So,
Dr. Buchan, I'm going to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. We did visit that question with the Legacy Board, and the answer is no. There's been an extraordinary amount provided this year, which has saved I'm not sure, 15, 16, 17% of a tax increase with the contribution this year. But what's remaining in legacy now needs to be there for its other purposes at this point.
Sorry, Councillor Cunningham.
I just want to point out one thing. In the last, I think, 8 years of council, I believe our taxes only, like, we had 000 quite a bit. And I think it went up around 4.3% in the 7-8 years we were on council. And if you factor in that with what we're going up now, that's only 2% a year in the last 8-9 years.
Correct.
And if, people never complain about the zero. But they're, now it's catching up to us. We should have been putting up 2% every year, possibly. But, that council,
you were facing COVID. You had other challenges. So
like Councillor Nace said, we were fighting to keep the taxes as low as we could. Maybe we should have, in hindsight, put them up 2% every year, 3% every year, like every other community was doing. Very few communities went through all that with 0%, and we did.
Councillor Randhawa.
Yeah, like I understand that, but before that, right, when we were not collecting any money from Arts and Land that time.
Yeah.
Our communities supported that Arts and Land to keep that going. So now we start making money, and that's why we gave the break that time. Like our council decided, okay, people contributed in those years, and now it's time to give them break. That's why our council gave them break that time. And now again, I'm asking, like, we can limit more money from legacy and bring down a little bit less burden on our taxpayers.
We're told the money is not there, that Legacy has given what it can to the capital budget. If you go through the capital budget, you'll see dividend, and that's what's... So anyway, we're being advised there's no more to give this year. Councillor Adie, I saw your hand.
This was the second part of what I had. What I'm hearing, we've heard it iterated tonight as well, is I don't think that people are questioning that there needs to be an increase. I'm not hearing that. Nobody's told me you guys got to do zero again. I think everybody gets it. And if you look around the province, I started Googling other municipalities' budgets, and nobody's on zero. Nobody's there. Just down the road, our closest neighbors are, I think, in the 10.3% range that they're considering this year. And I think, that inflation piece is the biggest driver of that, and every community is feeling it. I know that I'm feeling it every time I go to the grocery store. We all are. And so that is a reality. I did actually look up the inflation rate by sector, and I noted a couple of things. One of them is really important. The other one is just me being an English teacher. So one of the most costly increases was roughly 16% over the past year in fuel. So that is important to a city because of what cities do. And that's going to hurt. It's a big cost driver. And ironically, the only sector that was actually down in costs, and this is the English teacher speaking, was reading materials. And I think that is absolutely appalling. So in my view, there was always going to be an increase. I have heard that comment that if we had been doing a couple of percent a year, and there may be merit in it, but I also think that it's possible that if somebody who's working for a living, if they get a raise in the year 2019, most people who get that raise don't actually say, I'm going to put that in a box over here because I'm pretty sure something's coming in 2023. You don't. You actually start just spending within your means. So I'm not sure that we would necessarily be in a different position. I'm also not sure that, that debate matters. It's just the position we're in is what matters. And here we are. And we're faced with doing something about it. I think it's very clear that over time, I think a healthy level of revenue that is predictable in order that the community can do what the community needs to do is what we're aiming at. And I don't think that the current sort of situation we're in entirely gets us there. I don't think it's fair that we should try to get there just on the basis of current circumstances. And I think that there do need to be some changes in how we achieve a predictable revenue stream that we can build a community with. And I think that is going to involve a collaboration of the players that are involved with that. I don't think there's any way to get around it. So I guess others have spoken to the fire department and the McCarthy piece and some of the details. The way I look at it is I look at the way the thing is presented. I look at all of what we're doing through reserves and through dividends and through borrowing. And I've asked about the debt and what that looks like for us. And then I look at the last column in the way the requests are presented, and there's some items that are paid for from taxation. But if you look at that list, I think the biggest one there is the road budget. So I don't think we're going to cut the road budget. I just don't see that happening. So I honestly, as Councillor Niche said, I agree with him. I just don't think there's a lot there. And so I'm very reluctantly stuck with supporting more or less the budget that's here. I'm not sure there's a lot we can do with it. My hope, and I'm not basing this on anything other than hope, and hope doesn't necessarily get us anywhere, but I think that there's enough indicators in terms of our conversations with the province and with the federal government that maybe this is the hard year, and maybe some of the factors that we're dealing with in terms of revenue, I think there's maybe there's some changes that are possible, and the sooner the better from my point of view.
Thank you. Councillor Forster.
Thanks. One thing about the fire department that I haven't heard mentioned, if we were to move to a volunteer one, that would impact our personal property insurance, because that is one of the things. And so I'm not at all in favor of that, because the money will cost us more elsewhere. It's not just that's a solution.
Yeah,
there are implications.
It's not, just to be clear, it can. The underwriters won't give you that clear of direction, at least the last time around that I played this game. They won't be that clear that you cut your fire department to volunteer, we're down, whatever. But they have their checklist of things they look at, and it would be a risk for sure.
Definitely.
I think that's fair.
So I think here's where I'm struggling. I'm okay with the addition of the new staff person for IT. The chart that shows the difference, as well as the risk for cyber attacks, I'm fully on board with that. Where I'm struggling is the rationale for the part-time payroll employee, because it talks about them having to go through accepted WorkSafe claims. And I think I'm just not understanding. In any business I've been in, if you go on a WorkSafe claim, your employer doesn't pay you that WorkSafe money, WorkSafe does. And so I'm not understanding how a payroll person relates to a WorkSafe claim. I totally get the HR, and having an additional HR person will drastically, hopefully even decrease the need for that many WorkSafe claims, because they can start looking at the systemic problems to correct them. But I'm not, maybe it's just me, but I'm not understanding the justification that's written in there.
Let's give staff one more chance, and that's listen. Those are fair questions. Director Bauman, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just WorkSafe just making the payment. We also do top ups, and there's also a lot more management in the background that everyday people aren't aware of. So it was utilized as one of the justification examples because there is an increase in volume because WorkSafe expanded their qualifications. So there's and with the pandemic, there's been things like stress leave and all that sort of thing, which was not historically something that we were dealing with. So that is just one factor that is creating more work. So, and of course, because as I mentioned with the HR, payroll is linked as well. With HR having to try and hire, or when people leave, or there's much more volume of people that are coming in the door. There's also a lot of volume of people going out the door. And so that adds on to the regular week of just paying our staff. So each week is a payroll run. So there's an hourly run, there's a salary run every single week. So with all this extra volume, those were just utilized as specific examples that we could target for you, but it's much more than that. But we've tried to condense it into just what's absolutely necessary to help alleviate the desk, to make sure that people are paid, the calls are responded to when employees contact payroll desk. If we can't get to that, there's the risk that we'd have to outsource that, or we would have to set up just a call, go ahead and leave a message, we'll get to you when we can get to you. And that's not really providing really great service for our staff, which would also lead to unsatisfaction. So this is one of the means to try and address the shortage and the shortfall in time that we have to be able to do all the work that's necessary.
Continue if you wish.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you very much for that. There was some discussion in some of the question and answer that perhaps it's not going to be a full 2.5. It would be potentially be less. Would that decrease our taxes, noting that we're halfway through a year? And so, like, is there a way of doing that? Forgive my ignorance. It's just
Director Bauman.
Yeah, it probably would just come down by maybe $20,000, right? So I mean, if we were, it's 1% is 215,000. If you just left it at 12.5, there's a little bit of buffer there that we possibly could utilize if we end up with a little bit more snow.
Any other questions?
Nope, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to point, I really appreciated the chart for the IT. That really helps put a perspective for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Niche.
You know what? I'm going to go back to I guess the Lester days, and you had a you had a pulp mill that was generating substantial taxes and and contributing to the community in a big way beyond taxes, just with their corporate donations and work in the community. And you had councils that at that time they didn't think of asset management. That wasn't really a thing in that time, because I guess they just felt that taxes were just going to forever come in. And here we are, and at that point they built a lot of community assets. I mean, we have tons of beautiful assets that were built back in the Lester days. You got Performing Arts Center, Civic Center, swimming pool, all these great community assets that we have now. But those great community assets come at a cost, and the maintenance on them is where we're at now. So here we are 40 years later, not being able to collect the appropriate amount of taxes from industry to help maintain these assets that were built in the past. And we don't even actually have the ability to build any nice assets anymore. We don't have the money to put into fun things. We have money to put into sewage treatment, water dams, and all these things that are going to keep our town going, keep water flowing in our pipes. We all want a beautiful community, and we all want to see things happen here. But at the end of the day, the amount of taxes that is collected is where we're being impacted. And I don't want to turn this into a night of bashing the Port Authority, but I do want people to understand that what we're collecting in industrial taxes now is basically less than we were collecting 25 years ago. And 20 years ago, we had nothing. So the fact that we're collecting less taxes now, or equivalent of less taxes now from major industry, compared to a time when we had nothing going on. If you said to say, let's just say, I'm going to use Houston as an example, kind of a slow town. If I went to Houston and I said, hey, would you guys be interested in a grain terminal, a coal terminal, a pellet plant, a container port, propane facilities, and all of this industry for your town? What do you think they'd say? They'd be, oh, that would be amazing. That's going to increase our taxes. Well, that's the reality, is it's not. It's great for jobs. It's great for our town that we had some sort of resurgence, and we are one of the lucky communities that have been able to crawl out of this hole that we were put in by, losing a pulp mill, which we're not the only ones that lost a pulp mill. But at the end of the day, we need to be able to help our commercial businesses lower their taxes. We need to be able to help our residents lower their taxes, so that, the only way we can do that is by somebody else contributing. And the only other contributor is the major industries. So I'm hoping that our government will help us, along with the port cap. And, I understand the reason behind the cap. And it's not so much I disagree with the cap. I just maybe disagree with the rate the cap is set at. So, whether the government wants to come forward with help with the cap, or help with, the Resource Benefits Alliance, or something along those lines, so that we are able to generate that extra couple $1 million a year that's going to be able to allow us to fix the things that we need to fix beyond water pipes. I mean, an example right now is the sidewalk where you sent the text today between 3rd and 4th Avenue. The sidewalk and the stairs that go up the hill, it's closed. And I can tell you right now, it's not going to be open anytime soon, because that is so low on the priority list behind water, sewer, all these other things, that we'd be lucky if we fix that in the next 10 years, the way our tax is set up right now. Another example that would be retaining wall that failed on 11th Avenue and Conrad Street. That's not on the budget. That's not on our budget this year. So what do we got? We have a road with some barricades sitting there so nobody drives over the bank. Throw some rock in the hole to hold the road up while we sit on that. Who knows when that's going to be fixed? Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? The year after? 10 years? Who knows? And that's going to happen in a lot of places in this community. And we need the government to help set this up so that we're successful for the future.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Councillor Skelton Morvan.
I made the cut this time. We had a couple laps on this side. Yeah, I guess we can't pick on Houston. Houston's going through a tough time right now, so we've all been there. I guess for me, just looking at the budget and where we're at, I wanted to take some time to speak to a few of the items. One of the which I think was the swamp that was referenced. For being a part of the original team that kind of went to seek that opportunity out with Director Pucci and at the time Dr. Long, seeing those pieces and those savings potential for that kind of speaks for itself. Optimistically, we'd be looking at $200 million in savings, but 100 plus, kind of given the terrain and how much that really can take up, instead of investing $300 million into a sewage treatment plant that is not a sexy investment and stinks up the next 5 blocks. Looking at these alternative measures, and for context sake, when we say wetlands, these are not developable properties. For us to drop $30 million in gravel to bring it up to grade, just to have it sink anyways, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. To utilize what it's already naturally doing and emphasize that process, and adding the granulated media and some of the geosubstrate that we can add to it to make it more efficient, I think there's plenty of opportunity there. And for just context sake, looking at our budget, had Legacy Inc. not existed, or any of these other entities that some folks think we should or shouldn't have, we'd be in the mid 30% tax increase. So having those dividends in place and being an entrepreneurial municipality that has alternative revenue streams, we've been very proactive in development and all those other pieces. It's definitely not for a lack of trying. Any other municipality would kill for the staff that we have right now, and making sure that we reinvest in the people that continue to serve this community and live in this community, and allowing for those systems to thrive, I think is really important. If we start to put strains on sections and departments, the whole machine will start to crumble. When we have all of this development ahead of us, let alone the catastrophic failures, I think we peaked at 8.1% this year in inflation and averaged out at 7.5%. So looking at the 12.5, 5 and change, 4 of that in PILT, 1% in staff. I think we're fortunate, and although I still have the pieces that weigh on me, I'm thinking about the folks that are on fixed income. So I can understand where a lot of that stress and that pressure can come from, because a lot of the times those benefits do not keep up with inflation or the CPI index. So looking at those pieces and how can we kind of find a collaborative way forward at this point, and as someone who had moved the motion, I definitely support where we're at this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Listen, I think we've all said it. We appreciate that 15.7, 12, it doesn't matter. They're big tax increases, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt some people more than others, not in the amount, but in the ability to pay. And I get that, and that's a challenge. As you all know, and I last sat in this chair in a time where we were cutting millions out of the budget, where we actually did reduce the fire department, and we made really tough cuts that cost me friendships, quite frankly. And if I thought that was the era we were in, and I thought that's what we needed, I would recommend we do it again. But the circumstances are so different. We have an opportunity to rebuild our community now. Last time it was about holding on while we rebuild an economy so people get jobs, right? So that people stop leaving town and they have a reason to stay. And so that families aren't being disintegrated and family wealth isn't being eliminated. That was then. I walk into this with maybe a unique perspective. You've heard me say it before. There is a management team in place here at City Hall that any other community would kill for. And the 4 directors that are here in this building are all Prince Rupert, I call them kids. They're not kids, but they're products of the Prince Rupert school system. They were born and raised here. And we've been lucky enough not only that they've gained the skill sets that they have, but they've chosen to apply them here for us in the city. And I'm going to speak to some awards that are sitting on my desk now. I'm going to have to get a bigger desk because these teams are attracting national awards for innovative thinking. And there's going to be more. Yes, we have a revenue shortfall. I got to tell you that. Coming back, the work that we did around attracting and retooling our economy has been wildly successful on the jobs front. It has not yet produced for us the revenues that we require to rebuild the community. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm thankful for every single one of those industries. I could regale you with stories of what they did for this town when we were on our knees. How the employees at Prince Rupert Grain took all of their saved up Christmas party money that they'd put in all year long and donated it all to the Salvation Army because they knew families were hurting and it just didn't feel right to have a Christmas party that year. And so this is not about who's good, who's bad. It's about the math and where we're at and what we need to do. We can't live with $1 million road budget when we need $2.5 million to fix roads if they were all in good shape. I went across the 6th Avenue Bridge today. Holy, that's all I can say. This is my town. This is where I live. And if nobody else is going to step up, I'm prepared to step up now because I think we're on the verge of a breakthrough. We are going to see some buildings coming out of the ground. We are going to start to see development. Don't get me wrong, it is not going to be next week, next month, but it's going to be over the next few years. This is going to change. And this is my commitment to you, to the public. We will do everything we can to chase every last dollar we can. We will be on airplanes anywhere we need to go to get that money from the federal government that would match what the Premier gave us, which is an astonishing amount of money. An astonishing amount of money. We'll go get the feds to do that if we possibly can. And we will chase down all those other revenue sources that we made a list of them the other day in Dr. Buchan's office, and you could see where it takes us to where we can rebuild, to where we can get a little bit ahead, and to where eventually we can start doing what was done for us a generation ago. I mean, we swim in a swimming pool that most of us never built. We go to a performing arts center, an incredible performance over the weekend in a performing arts center that most of us never built. It was a generation before us. They built it for us. And I would like to think that this council, and as well as the councils that have gone before, are setting the stage to rebuild a Prince Rupert that generations in front of us will be grateful. And they'll play in facilities that they didn't pay for. And anyway, and that, full confession, when staff were coming into the room and saying, City West is given $1 million, $500,000 this year, $500,000 next, we can bring the number down from 15.7 to 12, whatever, 12.5. I said, don't. Put that into the roads. Let's have $1.5 million road budget. That's where I'm at. Now, I'm not arguing it for here tonight. The resolution's in front of us. I know I'd lose that argument. But that's where my head's at. Let's rebuild Prince Rupert for the next generation. Anyway, that's my piece. I want to thank you. I want to thank the staff for the incredible hard work. I want to thank you, council, for the hard work you've done, not presupposing how you're about to vote. And I want to thank the public for people that have come down and spoken to us, for people that have sent in emails, that people did the little slider thing to give us an idea of which way they would rather go. All of that incredibly helpful. And before I call the vote, I just want to turn to Dr. Buchan once again. This, because he sits there, it's not the same as having him in the room. So I always want to keep checking in to make sure anything else you would have us know before we go ahead and vote.
Your Worship, thank you for the opportunity. I think it's been very well covered, and I appreciate all the discussion around this.
Thank you. With that, all in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Randhawa is opposed. Before we go on, and we'll try and get through the rest of this. Listen, I mean, you know how I try to run meetings very quickly. This was too important to move through quickly, but I'll try to get us through the rest of the agenda quickly. But before I do that, I want to speak to these two new awards that are sitting on my desk. And they were given, one is the Lieutenant, they're gorgeous, by the way, Lieutenant Governor's Award presented to BBA, which is engineering, and the City of Prince Rupert for the Woodworth Dam. It's the 2023 awards for engineering excellence. So that's the Lieutenant Governor's Award. And then over here is the Award of Excellence, again presented 2023 awards for engineering excellence, presented to BBA and the City of Prince Rupert, again for the Woodworth Dam. Maybe I'll send one that way and send one that way. They both look the same. This is the work that's being done by this team here in this building. It follows this Brownie Award, which is a national award for brownfield reclamation that was given for the work on Watson Island. All right, are you ready to move on through the agenda? All right. Item number B is a report from the corporate administrator regarding development variance permit with the recommendation that council proceed to approval of the development variance permit of application 2301. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillors Cunningham and Skelton Morvan. Any discussion, questions, comments? There's the report in front of you. Councillor Cunningham.
So he's already built this.
It is partially constructed. Construction was stopped until approval.
Did he have a building permit?
I turn to Director Miller. Is there a building permit? You can turn to somebody else.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will need to confirm exactly what permits are in place. However, I can assure you that nothing will continue without the appropriate permit, which is why you're considering this variance this evening.
All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. We have a report from the planning manager with regards to a development variance permit DVP 2302 with a recommendation that council proceed to the statutory notification process for development variance permit number 2302. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Randhawa, Councillor Adey. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Report from the Director of Operations Intergovernmental Relations regarding the Water Infrastructure Project Phase 1 award with the recommendation that Mayor and Council receive this report for informational purposes and award to Coast Tsimshian Northern Contractors Alliance Phase 1 of the Water Infrastructure Program for up to $20 million under the Master Service Agreement. Can I have a motion to that effect? Councillor Skelton Morvan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adey. Any discussion? Councillor Niche.
Being that this project has substantially increased since the last time it was discussed, I'd just like to know what more are we getting for the additional costs?
Director Pucci, would you speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just, first of all, I just wanted to point out within the report, there's a really good background on where we're at with the water analysis and the infrastructure replacement strategy. So what we've done is we've expanded this phase 1. There's two parts of this, obviously. There is the Schwatlands Road portion. We gave them the first award to start looking at materials and purchasing the materials. This is now for the construction and installation, and we're going from where Fern Passage submarine line connects up with this Schwatlands Road pipe all the way to the reservoir. So this will go all the way on Schwatlands Road up what's the part of Prince Rupert Boulevard, Frederick Street, and then up Crestview, and then all the way to Montreal Circle. This is a large diameter HDPE pipe, very expensive pipe, will be the most expensive pipe that we likely purchase, and it will secure our water source for the community and will be put into a common trench under the road, where it should be instead of above ground, which is susceptible to tree falling and other hazards. So the price is just increased because of it hasn't really increased. The price is what it is because of the size of pipe, type of pipe, and the installation technique. So we've started to move forward on this to get design going, and we've also already have activated Broadwater Industries, who are working on the First Avenue project, and that is associated with a priority corridor as well.
Councillor Niche.
And since it's going to be under the road, so in this $20 million, is the road portion of that included in this $20 million, or is that going to be coming out of the additional 20 that will be requested for road repairs?
Director Pucci.
No, this $20 million will cover all of the road repairs associated with this project. We will be converting that Schwatlands Road to a MMCD spec dual lane road. Right now it is about a lane and a half, so it will be a standard road width, which will likely be safer for the community going back and forth to the industrial site.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Councillor Cunningham.
In an analysis of next steps, Director Pucci, it says which has local full circle equipment and workforce in line with the existing MSA. Can you explain that statement to me?
Director Pucci.
Sure. This company has all of the workforce and the equipment required to complete the project. So we wanted to make sure that they have the ability to scale up and scale down as required for several work fronts. This program, when it gets into full swing, will have several work fronts going. So we need to make sure that this company, along with other companies that we hire, will have the ability to do the work.
Who's going to oversee that they're using local equipment and local workers whenever possible, and not like some other projects in the city have been done without a town equipment and
Director
workers?
Pucci.
Well, we don't get that granular with their equipment and their personnel. They have stats that we've provided that show all of their local workforce, the number of workers that are in the community, the number of First Nation workers, the number of training workers, and their equipment. So that was provided. That information has been provided.
Other questions from council? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Report from the corporate administrator with regards to a liquor license amendment with the recommendation that council resolves to support the liquor license amendment to enable a lounge area endorsement for 380 Bill Murray Drive, which is the renovated CN building. Can I have a motion? Motion from Nish, seconded Skelton Morvan. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have a bylaw, Cow Bay Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3516/2023, with the recommendation that council give fourth and final readings to the City of Prince Rupert Marina Fees and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3516/2023. Moved Councilor Randhawa, seconded by Councilor Adey. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Any items from council? Council roundtable. Councilor Adey.
I'm going to make a comment that bridges the gap between the sublime and the ridiculous. The sublime was the show at the theater over the weekend, Mamma Mia. I went on the Friday night. It was absolutely fabulous. And as a long-term resident and as a retired teacher, seeing a number of people who I have taught involved, seeing people that are in this room with us stretch out and do something new. And also, I think particularly understanding some of the backstory in the lives of some of the people that are involved in the production made it that much more poignant. So I just think it was fantastic, right from backstage, across the stage, and up to the sound booth. It was brilliant. So I really enjoyed it. So congratulations to everybody involved in that. And I saw that the Saturday show actually sold out. So it was a success on all levels. To the ridiculous, I had a conversation with somebody about dogs and the things that dogs leave behind. Specifically, the salt marsh in Seal Cove. So the concern being dogs off leash, and then of course tangentially the things that dogs leave behind and aren't being picked up. So I guess it's a reminder to everybody that owning a pet is a responsibility, but also perhaps a question with regard to where that kind of problem, and it is a problem, it's not just the Seal Cove marsh. We hear these concerns elsewhere, and I know for myself, in walking a dog, I sometimes get a little tired of walking my big dog and having somebody else's dog that's off leash come bounding over, knowing that it's not going to go well, and the person will go, "Oh, don't worry, she's friendly." Well, it takes two to be friendly, and so I think those regulations are in place for a reason. So the question would be, understanding that our bylaw officers are busy and that there are many things that might rise higher on the priority list, what is the current state of play in terms of how that is managed?
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. People are more than welcome to submit any bylaw complaint, regardless of the deemed importance. Bylaw will attend. We do also have the bylaw officers working alternative hours. So they don't always work Monday to Friday. They don't always work 8 to 4. So they are out on the weekends, and they will issue tickets for dogs off leash. They have done it before, and given that the weather is improving, you'll likely see them traipsing around the trails and the parks to ensure that this is actually happening.
Councillor Cunningham.
On that note, I'd like to point out that the Salt Marsh Park was actually cleaned up by some volunteers that went down there and did it on their own after they'd complained bitterly about it. And they've done it a couple times, one of them being Jenny McLean, you know, who works down at Inland Air and walks that way all the time. So, you know, and I've observed a lot of people, you know, the dog behind them or in front of them and doing its business, and they just casually walk by. So people should maybe take into consideration that dogs have to be picked up after.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Niche.
You can't fix stupid and you can't teach common sense.
That may be a good note to end on. Anyone else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillors Randawa and Ady, all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. Meeting's adjourned.